No presentation. So
No, I'm going old school. I'm going, so hopefully I'll hold your attention. Look, it's, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's wonderful to listen to Martin and a bit of a challenge following his presentation. What I want to do is I'll quickly sort of talk about how I ended up where I ended up. I feel like a kind of bit of an accidental leader, really. And then I want to talk a bit about my experience with Unity, both from the perspective of having, because my background, I spent 10 years as an advisor, political and policy advisor at Parliament House. Indeed, I was fisheries advisor for 5 years with Mark Vale and Warren Truss from the late 90s to around 2004. And I think the fisheries industry back then could have benefited from Unity, but I'll get to that. Perhaps how you can achieve Unity from my experience and maintaining it. So, look, yeah, I sort of ended up as CEO of the Australian Livestock Exporters Council, which probably wasn't a gig that everybody wanted back in early 2012 after the disaster of the Indonesian ban in 2011. But as most people know me, I'm happy to take on a challenge. I've had a few, I've got to say. There were some challenges when I was fisheries advisor. The northern prawn fishery back then and the effort reduction, that was where the industry was heavily divided. We had small operators versus big operators. We had politicians backing one lot, politicians backing another, and here, I was the advisor, and Warren and Mark and then Warren were left to try and be, okay, so which side are we going to pick? One of the lessons is never put politicians in that position. I remember another industry, the organics industry. This is in early 2000. There were 3 national associations purporting to represent the organics industry, all coming to the minister wanting their view to be the one that the minister acted on. And the minister said, guys, go and lock yourselves in a room, come back with a single strategy, because I am not going to be the one that decides, picks the winner here. And we know with the northern prawn fishery, it was an awful time. It was a difficult time. It was a difficult time for industry. It was very difficult, up on the hill. Indeed, it got to the point, and I'll share this with you, I even got a death threat from the industry because it was such a because there was that lack of unity. And so that was an experience for me that early on in my career up on the hill, was when industries came to me, and I dealt with a few. I dealt with the single desk for wheat. I dealt with the dairy industry through deregulation. Again and again and again, particularly because of my experience with agriculture, I saw industry after industry wanting the political process to resolve the issues. Now, we've got that very circumstance right now. Backpacker tax. Everyone familiar with the issue around the backpacker tax? Now, I'll declare I'm as you mentioned before, I'm doing some media work for the NFF just as a fill-in for a few weeks. At the moment, I left ALEC as the CEO back in July, and I'm sort of looking for a new role at the moment, and the NFF asked me to come and help them. So that's why with backpacker tax. Now, at the moment, you've got the government digging in on 19%. You've got Labor digging in on 10.5%. You've got the crossbench sort of all over the place a bit. The Greens sort of haven't quite worked out where they haven't actually quite understood the issue, but they're sort of advocating 0%. So you've got, and the industry, in a sense, is split. Because there's been a breakout amongst growers. Some going and lobbying for a lesser rate. The NFF, trying to corral and coordinate a unified position, and unfortunately, ended up where we are to now, where we are today. And it's not an ideal situation because who loses? Who loses? I mean, the producers who've got to have summer crops that aren't going to be able to be picked. We as an economy are losing because backpackers aren't coming to Australia. So unity matters. It doesn't just matter in for your board or your few members. Often it has much broader ramifications. And indeed, I saw similar when I was working as State Director for the National Party in New South Wales, again in the political process internally around issues. And you know, and clearly, you know, I'll talk about live export in particular. I think, I guess, you know, to be credible amongst you, and have I helped deliver unity? I'd like to say yes. I think there's a shade for me. I'd say there's a few shades of yes. And I'll look at live export as example. With somebody that Martin knows well, a woman by the name of Catherine Tay White. She runs a company called Futurise, very involved in sort of social licence to operate and helping industries understand social responsibility and social licence to operate. We developed up a social licence strategy for the live export industry. So this is an industry that, you know, 2011, you know, wanted to fight, blame everyone else for the problems that happened and why the ban happened. The ban happened because they neglected to keep ahead of changing community values around animal welfare, and I think it's very relevant in the seafood industry. And I remember, you know, the debate back, let's using the northern prawn fishery, there are others as well, where the argument publicly was very much about fact and science and we're on the right. But, you know, I think when you think about unity, whether it's external and internal, keep in mind emotions drive initial reactions to situations. So if you're out in the public, as live export did in 2011, and you know, horrific footage of animal cruelty, what did the export industry do? They said, they talked about facts, what we were trying to do. The community didn't trust them. Didn't want to hear talking about we've implemented this sort of program in this market. And I think it's a really important, you know, in terms of what I've been able to achieve with the live export industry is to get them to understand outrage. You know, that your licence to operate is a balance of managing outrage and dealing with the hazards, the risks, the actual factual, the things that you do. I also got agreement, and again we had several incidents in the live export industry during my tenure, which I think were far worse than 2011. We had the horrific circumstances of the 10,000 sheep brutally slaughtered in Pakistan. We had several incidents in Vietnam. The very first time it hit the media, which was a sledgehammer, we had already acted on. We were already able to communicate that we got ahead of the issue. There was a 6-point plan that I was able to lead amongst the industry to get them to agree to a process of change on the ground, to implement some new practices and some new measures. So while I was we were only in the media 24 hours. And that was, the vision was worse in 2011, and we managed to do it. Again, because manage the outrage, address the concerns, the way people were feeling, and bridge to the facts of what we'd actually done with the 6-point plan. So, I mean, there are a whole range of other things I wish that the live export industry, you know, I could have led in terms of unification. But I agree with Martin. The one thing that is critical is you don't act just when there's a crisis, and that is. So, and I agree with Martin wholeheartedly, that is just so typical, industry after industry after industry. You know, they're not in the media, they think, okay, everything's okay. Well, that is the time to actually look at your risk profile. You know, if you feel uncomfortable about something that you're doing or your business is doing or your industry is doing, I can assure you when the community finds out, they're going to even be more horrified. So get ahead of the issues is a really important part of, I think, being a successful unified industry. So for me, what does, I mean, in terms of my experience, you know, I go to the last question about the emperor has no clothes. Unity is critical. Do not think that you can be in industry and operate successfully, and particularly in terms of influencing public policy, if you are perceived at the very least to be unified. What does that mean? You need a unity of purpose. So what do you want to achieve as an industry? Have a vision, have a mission, have principles and a strategy and a clear agenda. You need, I think, in something like a lot of agricultural industries, you really have to have agreement that change is necessary. I think that's a really difficult part of creating unity because, and I can go to a topic that I'm quite passionate about, which is social licence to operate. It is still a very difficult issue for a lot of people to understand, particularly perhaps those who aren't so exposed to the corporate world of business that are used to CSR, having to report corporate social responsibility. That's my experience. A lot of smaller operators find it very challenging because social licence to operate, a lot of the principles are counterintuitive. Engaging with your opponents, being open and transparent, calling out problems before anybody else does. That is absolutely critical. If you're in charge of the agenda, if you've got a problem, call it out. Wait till a third party calls it out, as live export's done time and time again, for example. Who's running the agenda? Are you running it or are you reacting to the agenda? I prefer to be out in front. Now that is difficult. You're still going to get slammed, it's still going to be hurt, but actually you're building trust. So I think one of the challenges really is around, in terms of what does unity look like, is for an ag sector and any sector that has, the community has views. You need to make sure you're proactive and ahead of community expectations and invest in that. Now that really needs change management, and in an organisation you're going to have people that can understand that process of change management, because it is a cycle. 2 steps forward, 1 step back is very real when it comes to change, and particularly with social licence to operate, because in a lot of ways it is counterintuitive. Unity to me also looks like you don't air your dirty laundry outside in the public. That you have mechanisms internally where you can deal with issues. Now that might mean you need a whistleblower policy internally, be it a company, be it an industry association. What is your process for dealing with dissent? Because it's better to try and manage and deal with dissent internally than for it to be dealt with externally, because that will break down any sense of unity, and it gives people, bureaucracy and politicians, an opportunity, if they want to play some politics, to play one off another. So I think that to me is important. You need strong internal comms and engagement strategy. It's really critical. You need to be able to be have listening posts to make sure that there isn't a change or an emerging area, group within the industry that you're not listening to. Potentially they could become, the group that sort of goes external. So keep that in mind. And you need strong governance. It's really critical. Strong governance matters. A lot of people probably, think, I'll deal with that later. But governance is absolutely critical. I've already talked about engagement with politicians and the bureaucracy. They do divide and conquer is something that if you give them an opportunity, they'll take it up. They'll play one off against another. Again, the backpacker tax, if you think about it, is a really great example. I think in terms of helping internally drive long-term unity is be active in providing your bureaucracy with solutions. Because if you, look, particularly in my experience with Canberra and the Department of Agriculture, there been a lot of their ability, their capabilities have been gutted. So with live export, we had a lot of regulatory change that we were dealing with. SCAS, the Exporter Supply Chain Assurance System, which was the sort of animal welfare system to manage animal welfare outcomes overseas, had a lot of holes in it. It was developed in 6 weeks, and so we had a lot of change to deal with. We're also putting in approved arrangements. I don't know if you have a similar system in the seafood industry. We went to the department with the regulatory solutions and we engaged them, and we got a lot of positive change. We got a lot of our agenda through. Similarly with fees and charges as well. We got 30% reduction in the live export industry our fees and charges because we went to the department for solutions. So if you're able to drive outcomes with the department because you're proactively helping them, that's a great message internally to say, wow, you know, if you're an industry association, to really build, you know, that capital with your members and people wanting to be part of that organisation and being part of, you know, that unified strategy. I want to now talk about more about how to achieve unity. I know Martin talked about identifying common ground and finding, you know, everyone's driven by self-interest, so you need to identify what are those common threads, which is what Martin used within your industry. I'm a bulldozer, so I say this has to be fixed and I want it done now. Now that sometimes works, particularly in a crisis, and that worked with the live export industry over 4.5 years. But it isn't always the best way to approach it. Sometimes you might be, you know, the leader in the organisation. You might see a huge issue that has to be dealt with, but you have to temper your enthusiasm to fix it with what capacity there is within the organisation to follow, get behind you. So I mean that's really a judgment call you need to make. But finding that, you know, common ground, really understanding your members and what drives them is critical, and that goes back to that engagement strategy that you have developed. So can you use shared interest to build a platform upon which, you know, to develop unity within the organisation? So that's critical. You know, what can you get agreement on? What are the negotiables and the non-negotiables? And that equally applies, you know, if you're engaging with groups outside of your organisation. What are the issues? For example, for the live export industry, it was critical that we engage with Animals Australia. Now, my members really struggled. You know, this is an organisation that wants to see an end to the trade, and you're telling us we should go and talk to this mob? I said, yes. Think about it. There are a lot of issues that are common. Why can't we have a decent conversation? We can identify what's negotiable. I mean, what's non-negotiable is we're not about to end our own industry, and that needs to be clear and agreed on the table, but again, find that common interest. So, you know, find what's negotiable and what's non-negotiable, map out it, maybe it might be a few steps to get to the ultimate change. That's something the industry is currently doing. So I started it in developing indicators of animal welfare along the supply chain in the live export industry. You know, we needed indicators, and we needed a big solid set of indicators, but we weren't going to be able to get there straight away, so we got agreement around let's stagger it. I guess I'm being wound up here, so I'll move, that's okay, we can talk more later. I guess maintaining unity quickly, it takes work. You can never take it for granted. I think every day you need to be sort of asking yourself, okay, where are the emerging issues? Is this going to challenge unity within the organisation? Is this going to challenge us externally? Will that affect our members internally? Keep mapping the internal and external risk environment. But make sure your organisation has mechanisms to see lead indicators of change, not lag indicators of change. Politicians are absolute lag indicators of change. Now they think they're lead indicators, they're lag, okay? So get ahead of them. Don't wait till the pollies. If the pollies are starting to say to you, oh, I'm a bit worried about this, you are well behind dealing with the problem. Don't let the regulators just tell you the solution to your problems. Give them the solutions first. And look, I'll leave it there. I hope that's made some sense. There's a lot in this topic, and it'd be good to talk to you all a bit more about it in the Q&A. Thank you.